Ever considered how one simple habit could completely revamp your finances? A habit so powerful it could catapult you from a life of debt, disappointment, and constant worry to a place where money flows effortlessly your way. Sounds too good to be true? I thought so too. But that's precisely what transformed my life, pulling me from the brink of bankruptcy and making me a millionaire. It's also changed countless lives for others who've embraced this same approach. And now, I'm sharing the secret with you. Reflecting on my own struggles, years of hard work yielding little reward, a crucial truth dawned on me: hard work alone doesn't equal wealth. Otherwise, bricklayers rising before dawn, nurses pulling double shifts, dedicated teachers, and long-haul truckers would be among the world's wealthiest. The reality, however, is that many of these incredibly hardworking individuals remain burdened by debt, constantly juggling bills. This led me to a pivotal question: if relentless dedication doesn't guarantee riches, what does? The answer I discovered changed everything, aligning your mind with the frequency of abundance. Everything in the universe vibrates, including our thoughts and emotions. Initially, I didn't grasp this. I was vibrating with scarcity, worry, and fear, and guess what? That's exactly what I attracted. My income was meager, my debt overwhelming. I owed the equivalent of a year-and-a-half's salary. I remember nights spent fretting about the electricity bill, waking up already defeated. You might relate, that feeling of constantly putting out fires, always chasing, never truly achieving your goals. It's not living, it's merely surviving. My turning point came when I realized I needed to change not the external world, but my internal vibration. That's when I developed a simple yet profound habit. Each day, I read a small note containing my financial goal, a figure that seemed astronomical at the time. I had no idea how I'd achieve it, but I read that sentence repeatedly, daily, as if it were already a reality. It felt silly at first, but gradually, something shifted within me. My thoughts changed, my speech changed, and most importantly, I started noticing opportunities I'd previously overlooked. Science now clearly explains this. Our thoughts generate electromagnetic fields, and repetition strengthens neural pathways in the brain. Each repetition of my goal was like planting a seed in my subconscious. The more I repeated it, the more my mind believed, and the more my actions reflected this new belief. And things began to change. Helpful people appeared, previously inaccessible ideas emerged, and my demeanor became bolder and more focused. All this stemmed from a single habit: writing and reading a daily affirmation of my goal as if it were already mine. Take a moment to examine your life. What frequency are you currently vibrating on? Do you dwell on debt or abundance? On paying bills or earning more? That's the critical difference. It's not about working yourself to exhaustion, but about cultivating an internal state that attracts the right opportunities. This habit, dismissed by many as overly simplistic, revolutionized my finances, and it can do the same for you. Understanding how my mental repetition subtly shaped my decisions clarified why some thrive while others stagnate. It's not magic or luck, it's intentional mental conditioning. I chose one habit and practiced it diligently, writing a specific goal on a card and reading it morning and night, as if it were already a reality. At first, it seemed absurd. I lacked a clear how, valuable connections, or relevant experience. But each reading sharpened my focus, like shining a flashlight on paths that had always been there, but invisible when my mind was solely fixated on bills, emergencies, and fear. When you repeat an idea with emotion and clarity, your brain reinforces neural pathways, and your reticular activating system highlights signals consistent with what you've defined as important. That's how, traversing the same routes as the week before, I suddenly noticed discreet, outsourced services, signs on commercial buildings, less crowded times to present proposals, and key individuals who were previously just someone in the lobby. The external world seemed to have changed, but the real transformation was within me: my perception, focus, internal language, and ultimately, my daily choices. I tested this habit during a period where any mistake could have had dire consequences. There were nights I sat at my desk, card in hand, my mind screaming, "Who do you think you are?" Instead of fighting the doubt, I used it as fuel. I read my goal with conviction, and immediately created a minimal plan for the next day: one extra call, proposal submitted with 10% more boldness, conversation started with someone I usually avoided. Nothing grand, just consistency. Within weeks, I secured a contract that, months earlier, I would have considered too big for me. It wasn't luck, it was alignment between what I repeated and what I did, between my visualization and my self-presentation. Repetition conditioned my body to act like someone who already possessed that result, and aligned action generates momentum. This is where many people stumble. They write the goal, read it for 2 days, stash the card in a drawer, and conclude it doesn't work. It's like planting a seed and yanking it up every morning to see if it's sprouted yet. The habit only reveals its power when you persist long enough for your mind to adopt a new pattern as its foundation. I've seen this same mechanism operate beyond the financial realm. When someone starts repeating, "I manage my time masterfully," their schedule shifts, fewer empty promises, less guilt about saying no, fewer distractions. When someone repeats, "I make decisions calmly," impulse purchases decrease, negotiations improve, and sleep improves. And when the focus is financial, "I receive X dollars per month delivering Y value," the person starts charging accordingly, refining their offer, engaging with decision makers, and requesting referrals with precision. It's not magic, it's a new identity being practiced until it becomes automatic. That's how it was for me. One morning, after reading my card, I entered a building where I'd already received 3 rejections. Instead of requesting any service, I presented a specific solution to the building's most expensive problem during off-peak hours. I didn't invent competence out of thin air. I recognized it, refined it, and communicated it better because my mind was already trained to find the connection between my goal and the client's actual need. If you want to experience this firsthand, try the simplest and most decisive test. For 7 consecutive days, without fail, write your financial goal in a single sentence in the present tense, making it measurable and including a reason that would move you if you had to say it aloud. Read it upon waking and before sleeping. Then, answer 2 questions in writing. What's the smallest step that moves this goal forward today? And, what's the most likely obstacle and what action will I take when it arises? It's in this combination that the habit takes shape, emotional repetition to train attention, and a tiny step to train behavior. At the end of the week, observe the signs, conversations that opened up, ideas that unexpectedly surfaced, an unexpected invitation, a figure you finally dared to include in your proposal. It may seem insignificant, but that's how the pendulum starts to swing in your favor. There was one particular afternoon I'll never forget. I had my crumpled card in my pocket, returning from a visit where the response was a vague, maybe, who knows, later. Years before, I would have swallowed the frustration and gone home. That day, I stopped on the sidewalk, reread my goal, and asked myself, what would someone who already has this result do now? Instead of giving up, I went up 2 more floors, knocked on the administration's door, and offered a 3-day trial service, no strings attached, with before and after indicators. They accepted. 30 days later, the trial service became a contract, and the contract became a reference for other buildings. The dominant emotion that night wasn't euphoria, it was relief, the relief of realizing I wasn't at the mercy of chance, but in control of my mental conditioning, my focus, and my choices. If at any point you feel you're forcing it too much, take a small break from the pattern, close your eyes for 10 seconds, read your goal in a low voice, and immediately find 3 pieces of evidence that something in your life is already moving towards that goal today: a skill, a contact, an experience, a partial result. The brain loves evidence, and when you provide it, it releases the brakes. From there, guide your day with the question that changed my destiny: what's the next small, visible, and measurable action that confirms what I just stated? Repeat this long enough, and you'll notice the same thing I did. Life seems to conspire in your favor, but in reality, it's you who finally started conspiring for yourself. I grew up hearing that money was dangerous, that wanting more was greedy, that you have to suffer to deserve it. These phrases weren't harmless, they became the lens through which I viewed the world. And here's the key: until around age 7, our minds absorb everything without filters, accepting it as absolute truth. You grow up, change addresses, jobs, clothes, but you continue operating on the same emotional and financial programming installed in childhood. That's why so many people work double time and still feel like they're running on a treadmill: lots of movement, little progress. The mind has been conditioned to vibrate with lack, debt, and fear, and life responds at the same frequency. The signs that your programming is in control are clear when you know where to look. You earn a little more, and mysteriously, your expenses increase proportionally. You land a good contract, and days later, you make a basic mistake that nullifies your progress. It's always the same stumbling block. You return to the comfortable level of your financial self-image. It's like an internal thermostat calibrated to a certain ceiling. Once you surpass it, the system triggers invisible alarms, delays, distractions, guilt, impulse purchases, promises you don't keep. It's not a lack of strategy, it's a conflict between a new result and an old self. As long as your internal image doesn't expand, you'll treat any growth as a threat and pull the rug out from under yourself without realizing it. I fell into this trap myself when money started coming in amounts I'd never seen before. I felt like an intruder in my own prosperous life, as if it wasn't for me. And, in a mixture of anxiety and shame, I found myself sitting at a gaming table in London, betting absurd sums, almost as if I wanted to get rid of what I'd achieved. There, with a knot in my throat, I realized, it wasn't bad luck, it was self-image. I was trying to return to my old equilibrium point, that of family scarcity, balanced accounts, don't go too far. The emotion of that day wasn't euphoria, it was a kind of mourning for the character I needed to leave behind. And, in that morning, a decision was born, to reprogram my sense of deservingness so that success would cease to be an exception and become my new norm. I saw the same dynamic on the other side. A woman approached me after a lecture. She had received a substantial settlement. Within 2 years, it was all gone and the debts returned. It wasn't a lack of money, it was a lack of identity compatible with it. It's like giving a luxury car to someone who's only learned to ride a bike. She didn't destroy the asset out of malice, but out of lack of skill to manage it. Money amplifies what already exists within. If there's fear, urgency, or guilt inside, the result is loss. Therefore, earning more before seeing yourself as someone who knows how to maintain and multiply is like putting gasoline in a misaligned engine, loud noise, little progress, imminent breakdown. Breaking this cycle isn't a singular heroic act, it's a practical process of replacement. First, identify the belief that has dictated your path. Money is dangerous. If I prosper, people will reject me. I'm not good with numbers. Then, write the alternative in the present tense, simply and measurably. I manage money calmly and clearly. I receive X dollars per month delivering Y value. Next, prove it with daily micro behaviors, reviewing your bank statement for 5 minutes with curiosity, not guilt, asking for a better quote in 90 seconds, without over-justifying, setting aside 1% of all income for an opportunity fund, even if it seems small. And maintain the repetition until your body stops resisting the new pattern. Reprogramming is the intentional repetition of an idea until it replaces the old one. It doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the day you decide to stop negotiating with yourself. If doubt ever squeezes, take a 30-second pause and use a pattern-breaking technique I adopted. Breathe deeply, ground your feet, and ask quietly, honestly, what's the smallest action that confirms who I've chosen to be now? It might be sending that proposal with 10% more, saying no to a purchase that numbs, or calling the right person instead of spending an hour optimizing what doesn't move the needle. With each action, your internal thermostat recalibrates. Anxiety reduces, guilt dissolves, self-confidence ceases to be speech and becomes a memory in your body. And when the memory changes, life starts to follow. I suggest you try a simple 10-day protocol of misalignment and realignment. Days 1 to 3, belief inventory. Write down every automatic phrase that arises when you think about money. Days 4 to 7, replacement. Rewrite each phrase in the present tense, in behavioral terms. Days 8 to 10, evidence. Every day, collect 3 pieces of evidence that the new pattern is already underway: a conversation, a piece of data, a habit, a fee charged with serenity. At the end of this short cycle, you won't have become a different person, but you will have done something more powerful. You will have shown your mind that it doesn't control you unquestioningly. And when the mind understands that there's an adult in charge, it stops pulling you back to the familiar and allows the new to become comfortable. That's how paradigms break down, not in explosions, but in small decisions repeated until the old loses its authority over your life. There's an invisible line separating those who live in abundance from those who remain in scarcity, and that line isn't talent, luck, or inheritance, but how they see themselves and the world. I've seen people win immense sums, lottery prizes, unexpected inheritances, meteoric careers, and, a few years later, return to the same point as before, sometimes even worse off. This happens because the external result grew, but the internal remained small. Material success requires an identity that knows how to sustain and expand it, otherwise, the mind finds a way to return everything to the point where it feels comfortable. Consider the example of Mike Tyson, who earned billions in his career and ended up with nothing, not for lack of ability, but because his self-image still carried pain, trauma, and limitations that no fortune could erase. It's the opposite of what happened with Oprah Winfrey, who rose from extreme poverty, survived abuse and discrimination, and still built an empire. She consciously chose to nurture a mindset of growth and abundance within herself, and the world responded. What differentiated the two wasn't talent, but how they handled their inner image. I also found myself at this same crossroads. When I started having bigger results, part of me repeated, "This isn't for you, it'll end soon." This silent conflict led me to make self-destructive decisions, as if I wanted to prove that I wasn't worthy of keeping what I had achieved. I spent nights in casinos, risking in minutes what had taken months to build, until I realized I was trying to return to my old comfort level. It was as if my mind was programmed to pull the handbrake when I exceeded a certain limit. The feeling was one of not belonging, as if I were occupying a place that wasn't mine. And it was at that point that I understood that it wasn't enough to change the strategy or the work, it was my self-image that needed to be transformed, because it was the true thermostat of my financial life. This realization became even clearer when I encountered people who, theoretically, had everything to succeed, but failed because they believed they didn't deserve more than they already had. How many of us refuse opportunities because we think they're too big for us? How many diminish their own dreams to fit within what others find acceptable? This is the invisible poison of limiting beliefs, which disguise themselves as humility or prudence, but in practice keep us trapped in mediocre patterns. That's why I say that 95% of success is mindset and only 5% is strategy. You can have the best plan, the best mentor, but if, deep down, you still see yourself as small, you will find ways to sabotage the process. Science confirms this. Studies in behavioral economics show that well-being isn't directly linked to the absolute value of money, but to the perception of deservingness and how a person handles it. People who cultivate a vision of abundance experience less financial stress, even earning less than others who live in a scarcity mindset. This difference lies in how they interpret their own results and the choices they make from them. Those who believe they are capable of growing see every obstacle as a learning experience, every delay as an opportunity for adaptation. Those who see themselves as small, even in the face of great achievements, transform victories into defeats because they cannot sustain what they have achieved. And that's why the habit of aligning your identity with what you desire is so vital. It's not enough to write on a card that you want to earn more, you need to see yourself as someone who knows how to manage, invest, and multiply that money. It's not enough to say you want freedom, you need to live small proofs of freedom every day, consciously choosing where you spend your time, energy, and resources. It is in this daily practice that self-image begins to expand and pull life to a new level. The external world has no choice, it will always mirror the image you sustain within yourself. True transformation doesn't begin in your wallet, it begins in the mental mirror you carry every day. And all this is just the beginning of a journey that can completely transform how you see yourself and the world around you. The next step is right in front of you, simply click on the video that's appearing on the screen now. There, you'll climb another rung on your ladder of wisdom and become 1% better than you are right now. Thank you for being here with me, and I'll see you in the next video.